What if the worst moment of your life was actually the moment that was building you? This is a story about a boy who said the cruelest words a person can say to their mother. And it is also a story about how that same boy became the man she always believed he could be. But more than anything, this is a story about you, because somewhere in this story, you are going to recognize yourself, and what you do with that recognition will change everything. The roof was leaking. The room was filled with smoke from the stove. His mother stood in the kitchen cooking, tired, worn, silent. And then Marcus walked in, not with gratitude, not with kindness, with rage. He looked at his mother and said, "You are so stupid and so weak. I cannot depend on you for anything. I cannot expect anything from you. You do nothing for me. Maybe the reason Dad left is because of you. It would have been better if you had left instead of him." Before she could say a single word, he slammed the door and walked out. His mother stood there, heart shattered, eyes full of tears, and she said nothing. She simply turned back to the stove and kept cooking for him. Now, before you judge Marcus, understand where he came from. He grew up in a tiny apartment in one of the roughest parts of the city. His father walked out when he was young, and deep down, Marcus blamed his mother for it. He told himself a story, that she was weak, that she drove his father away, that if she had been different, his father would have stayed. So every time his mother gave him advice, every time she told him to stay away from trouble, he heard it as weakness. And in his search for strength, in his search for someone to look up to, he found the wrong people. Friends who skipped school, friends who had no direction, friends who made him feel powerful by being reckless together. Slowly, without even noticing, he became one of them. And one day that rage, that confusion, that pain he had never dealt with, came out directed at the one person who had never once stopped loving him, his mother. While Marcus was out there being reckless, his mother was working every single day, cleaning other people's houses, taking in sewing work late into the night, stretching every dollar to make sure her children had food, shelter, and a future. But she had been hiding something. For months, she had been unwell. Doctors had warned her repeatedly, "You need to rest. You cannot keep pushing yourself like this." But she had no choice. There was no one else. And so she kept going, until one day, her body gave out. She collapsed, was rushed to the hospital, and lying in that hospital bed, she looked at her son and said, "Your sister is still so young. Apart from you, she may have no one. Please take care of her. I trust you." And then, she was gone. Marcus cried in a way he had never cried before. Not the tears of a boy throwing a tantrum. The tears of someone who finally understood, too late, what they had. And in that grief, something shifted. He looked at his little sister, small, scared, alone, and he made a decision. Not out of motivation, not out of inspiration, out of necessity. He decided to become the person his mother always saw in him, even when he could not see it himself. Here is the first and most important lesson this story teaches us. Marcus did not change because he felt motivated. He changed because he had no other option. His back was completely against the wall. And this is something the most successful people in the world understand deeply. As long as you have a backup plan, you will never fully commit to your main plan. The safety net is also the thing that stops you from flying. In ancient times, when warriors landed on enemy shores, some commanders would burn their own boats. Not out of recklessness, out of strategy. Because when your soldiers know there is no way back, they fight differently. They commit completely. The question is, what boats are you refusing to burn? What backup option are you holding on to that is secretly keeping you from going all in on what matters? Marcus started looking for work. He knocked on door after door, but no one wanted to hire a young kid with no experience and no qualifications. One evening, he came home to find his little sister standing in the kitchen. "I'm hungry." He went to check the fridge. Empty. The cupboards. Empty. He sat on the floor and cried. And then, there was a knock at the door. A neighbor stood there. A woman his mother used to sew clothes for. She had heard what happened, and she said, "I cannot do much, but I know someone who owns a restaurant. Maybe they can find something for you there." Marcus took the job. The lowest job in the building. Sweeping floors. Washing dishes. Mopping up after everyone else. It was hard. It paid almost nothing. It came with very little dignity. But it came with one thing that mattered. Food. So neither he nor his sister would have to go to bed hungry. And he showed up. Every single day. This is the second lesson. Marcus had every reason to feel sorry for himself. His father abandoned him. His mother was gone. He was a teenager, carrying adult responsibilities, with no support system. The world would have understood if he had given up. But here is what self-pity actually does. It feels like processing pain, but it is actually just recycling it. Every minute you spend rehearsing how unfair your situation is a minute you are not spending doing something about it. The people who change their lives are not the ones who had it easiest. They are the ones who refused to make their hardship their identity. Your pain is real. Your struggle is real. But your pain is not your destiny, unless you decide it is. One day at the restaurant, Marcus overheard something. The head chef was leaving, and the owner was desperate to find a replacement. The salary being offered was 5 times what Marcus was earning. 5 times. Marcus went to the owner and said, "I know how to cook. Give me a shot." The owner looked at this kid, who had been sweeping his floors, and said, "You cook?" Marcus hesitated, then said yes. It was a lie, but it was a lie born from desperation, from the image of his hungry sister, from the absolute refusal to stay stuck. The owner said, "There will be a competition in 1 month for cooks. 1 dish. Fastest and best wins the job. You can enter." Marcus walked out of that office with 1 month to learn how to cook from scratch. With almost no resources, he found an old cookbook at a thrift store. He used the restaurant's Wi-Fi to watch cooking videos after his shifts. He asked the cooks quiet questions. He practiced at home with whatever tiny amounts of ingredients he could afford. Sometimes, when he had nothing to practice with, he practiced in his imagination, walking through every step, every cut, every technique, over and over, for 30 days straight. This is the 3rd lesson. Marcus could not control that his father left. He could not control that his mother died. He could not control that he was poor, or that the world was not handing him opportunities. But he could control what he did with his time. He could control whether he watched another video or practiced another technique. He could control whether he showed up or gave up. This is the invisible dividing line between people who change their circumstances and people who stay trapped in them. Stop fighting the things you cannot change. Start obsessing over the things you can. Your time, your effort, your focus, your response. That is your territory. Defend it. The day of the competition arrived. For competitors, 1 dish, 1 job. When Marcus saw the dish he had to prepare, he almost smiled. It was one he had practiced over and over, in videos, in his mind, at home. But here was the problem. He had never actually made it, from start to finish, in a real kitchen. The timer started. He moved fast, faster than the others. In his rush, he cut his finger chopping vegetables. He hit it. He burned his hand on the pan. He kept going. But when the timer stopped, he looked around. The other 3 had finished before him. And when the tasting happened, his dish was not the best. He had lost. People came over to congratulate him anyway, telling him how impressive it was, that he had even made the dish. But Marcus did not want consolation prizes. He quietly congratulated the winner and went back to sweeping floors. This is the 4th lesson, and one of the most important. Marcus entered a competition he was not ready for. He lied to get in. He lost publicly. He was embarrassed. And the next morning, he came back, on time, head down, back to work. This is what separates people who eventually win from people who stay defeated. Not talent, not resources, not perfect preparation. The willingness to fail and show up again anyway. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of the process of success. Every person you admire has a longer list of failures than you will ever see, because the failures happened in private and the success happened in public. Do not fear failure. Fear never trying. The morning after the competition, the restaurant owner called Marcus over. He looked at him and asked, "When I asked you a month ago if you knew how to cook, did you?" Marcus looked at him and told the truth. "No, I lied. I needed the money. I'm sorry." The owner was quiet for a moment. He did not appreciate the lie, but there was something he had witnessed that he could not ignore. The fact that Marcus had learned to make a complicated dish in 1 month with almost no resources. The fact that he had lost and still came back the next morning, on time, head down, back to work. He looked at Marcus and said, "Promise me something. From today, you never lie again. If you make me that promise, I have an offer for you." Marcus promised, and the owner said, "You cannot be head chef yet, but I need an assistant, someone who learns fast, someone who shows up no matter what. I want to open a second restaurant, and I need someone I can trust to run this one. I think that person is you." The salary of an assistant was 5 times what Marcus was earning. He stood there, unable to speak. He thought about his sister, about his mother, About that night on the kitchen floor, crying, with nothing left to give. And he said yes. The fifth and final lesson. Marcus's entire life changed. Not in one dramatic moment, but through a series of small decisions. To keep going when everything said stop. He was not born resilient. He became resilient by facing things he was not ready for and refusing to stay down. Change is uncomfortable. Growth is uncomfortable. Every version of yourself that is better than the current one lives on the other side of discomfort. The question is not whether change will come. It will come. It always does. The question is whether you will resist it or whether you will use it. Years passed. Marcus put his sister through school, then college. He eventually ran the restaurant himself. One evening, after a long day, he came home and sat down in silence. And he thought about his mother, the woman who stood at a smoky stove in a leaking apartment, cooking dinner for a boy who told her she was nothing. And he said quietly, "Mom, you were never weak. I was just too broken to see your strength. I didn't understand what you were carrying. I didn't understand what you were doing for me. I don't know why Dad left, but I know this. You never left. Not once. Not even when I gave you every reason to. I love you. I miss you. And everything I am, I owe to you." 5 lessons from one story. 1. Burn the boats. Remove your backup options and commit completely. 2. Stop recycling your pain. Self-pity feels like healing, but it is not. 3. Control what you can control. Your time, your effort, your response. 4. Do not fear failure. Fear never trying. 5. Embrace change. The better version of you lives on the other side of discomfort. These are not just lessons from a story. They are the principles that every person who has ever built something real has lived by. The question is not whether you know them. The question is, will you use them? Subscribe for more stories that challenge you to become who you are capable of being. See you in the next one.